Hello, everyone. This is Ramirez, and today I'm doing something a little different. Something I don't necessarily want to do, but I've been thinking about this in my head, and maybe I won't even post this video, or maybe I'll post it for a little while and I'll take it down. But there's been a question in certain HEMA circles, not certainly not my own, but it's gotten me thinking about it. Is how do we make HEMA mainstream and profitable? And for myself, it's like I have a job. For me, HEMA is a hobby. It's personal to me, but it's not something I want to necessarily make a profit off of. But there are a lot of people who do, and there are a lot of people who say, "Well, what about tournaments, making them mainstream, making them big ESPN sporting events?" Um, and once again, I'm not a fan of the idea, but I was actually watching last week tonight with John Oliver, and he brought up a very interesting point. And really, let's hypothetically say you're one of those people that wants to profit off of HEMA and HEMA competitions and HEMA tournaments and being a professional sports star within HEMA. There is a solution, and the solution is actually very, very simple, which is you go and promote to the online betting community and you make HEMA a gambling event. If people could gamble on fighters, winning different pools, betting on winners of SoCal or other big tournaments, that's a game changer. Because once you get that kind of money involved in it and the potential for there to be monetization of tournaments and a reason for people to watch, it would be incredibly popular. And it wouldn't take much with the online betting community because they'll bet on anything. So if you started promoting HEMA tournaments and HEMA fighting on that, I mean, overnight, Sean Franklin will become very wealthy because depending on how he markets it, HEMA ratings would become the next basically handicapper guide for betting on HEMA tournaments because you'd know where people's ranks were, where they were weighted, what tournaments they'd won, who fought who, so you could actually do kind of fantasy draft picks of who you want to win and how. You could have various parlays. I mean, like this could really be a reason for people who aren't interested in HEMA to watch HEMA, and people who are like, well, how do we get to sell more seats at tournaments or make it profitable? Well, if people were gambling on it, there'd be more interest. There would definitely be the interest of being in there in the same way we watch TV or movies like Bloodsport, and like there's that select clientele of gamblers that are all there wanting to watch the violence live. Um, I think it would bring out the worst in people in HEMA because of that, because of the money being involved in kind of prize fights and things of that nature. So I don't think it would be good for HEMA. But if people were really serious about, well, we want it to be more mainstream. We want to make it interesting for people to watch. Now, I've already done a video about why HEMA shouldn't be that way. I'll try to remember to link it to this video. But the reality is, you'd have to have a reason for people to pay for seats to watch HEMA. They would have to either need to understand it so that they could appreciate what's going on. Betting gives you a reason. If you're going to gamble on it, you need to understand it. So all of a sudden, you have an audience that's actually wanting to educate itself on who's going to win and why. What are they good at? Because of that, they would have an interest. And so today I'm smoking because it's fine for us to bring up vices because we're now talking about bringing up gambling in HEMA. So if we decided to promote events with gambling, we would have a reason for people to be interested in what we're doing. And people are gambling on much dumber things out there, but that would be kind of the way that then all of a sudden people who are very successful at HEMA would invariably become our sports stars and sports legends. So if you want that, you're doing these tournaments and you want fame and recognition, and then logically with that comes brand deals and other stuff that you can profit on. Gambling is kind of the way to go to make this mainstream. And because we don't have to do it ourselves, there's various gambling apps, MGM Grand, DraftKings, whatever it is. If people got into that, if we got into that as, hey, here's the information, here's the fights, here's how, you could bet on these things, that would be a real fast way to make, events where it was, kind of these, I mean, you see it already that those betting websites and stuff, they pour money into advertising at the events. So there would be theoretically money to be had by being brand promoted as a tournament, if you're a tournament owner, if you run a tournament, to make money by having the branding of the different sports betting apps at your tournament. And then, as I said, you'd have the more likelihood of people wanting to attend to see it in person live, to get a sense. If you're betting good money and there's a competition in your town, you could actually see the fighters. You could see how tall they are, how much distance, how they train, and be like, I want to bet on that person. I don't want to bet on that person. I want to bet that person loses, that person wins. There's a lot of potential. But to kind of finish my thought, I absolutely hate the idea of this. This would lead to bring out all the worst things in HEMA. Gamification, judges, potential bribery of judges, potentially, people encouraging others not to show up to a certain HEMA tournament, or doing bad things to make sure someone doesn't advance, a la, sweep the leg in the Karate Kid movies. It would invariably bring out the worst, I think, in my opinion. But as I said, I kind of was having these thoughts and saying, okay, well, people have made waves about how to make HEMA more mainstream, make it more profitable. And definitely this would be a way to make that happen. Personally, I hope it never happens. I hope that everyone looks at me and says, Ramirez, you're absolutely crazy for even suggesting that. That would never work, because that means they would be less likely to pursue it. But in all seriousness, if we look at the kind of money that's being made in the sports betting and gambling world, and that would be a reason for people to be interested in what we do, albeit for what I think are all the wrong reasons, I think that would invariably make it so that people would want to be interested in HEMA in its competitive and sport terminology. And quite frankly, we're at least a little more interesting to watch than Olympic fencing. So there would definitely be room for that. There would be room for all sorts of HEMA sparring events to become popular, and then a reason for everyone else to do it. The quest for fame and fortune by being competitive HEMA people. As said, not for it. It is kind of a thought experiment as far as I'm concerned. I certainly hope no one does take me up on this and say, hey, that's a good idea. I think that's what we're going to do. Because I think that inherently it would ruin HEMA for those of us who do have it as a passionate hobby, and make it more about the dollars than anything else, or euros or whatever people are gambling in. It would make it more about the money than the meaning, and that would be a terrible thing. So that's it. This is Ramirez. I'll see you with a happier video later on.